interesting that there have been a series of allegations and discoveries about candidates who are standing for Reform UK in this election, and this definitely isn't the first. This is almost like straw breaking camel's back, if you like. This has been a string of quite serious revelations that have come out about candidates, and every time Nigel Farage is asked about it, he doesn't seem to take it super seriously. He's not willing to get rid of all of the candidates who've been accused of doing something wrong, because at the moment his numbers would be dwindling if he were to do that, because there have been so many that have ended up at the front page of a newspaper for saying something that is deeply inappropriate. And we noticed in the past week or so, Reform's poll lead seems to have kind of either stifled or be dropping a tiny bit, and there were lots of questions about whether or not that was to do with Nigel Farage's comments on Ukraine and the West's intervention, West prompting the war in Ukraine is what he said, or whether that was a wider issue about other Reform candidates, like the revelations that we're having today. So it'll be interesting to see what Nigel Farage himself says about this. I mean, the canvasser that they spoke to in this investigation said in the statement, he said that Nigel Farage himself nor the Reform Party were aware of his personal views about migrants and things like that. But we obviously have to wait for a response directly from Reform and from Nigel Farage about that.
Yeah, so there is a statement here, isn't there, from Nigel Farage to Channel 4 News. I'm dismayed by the reported comments of a handful of people associated with my local campaign, particularly those who are volunteers. They will no longer be with the campaign. Appalling sentiments, he calls them. Reform UK is a party for everybody who believes in Britain. And he goes on to that point. It is a Channel 4 undercover investigation. And we just heard a couple of clips there where he describes Prime Minister Rishi Sunak using a racist word. He also calls Islam, this particular chap, Mr. Parker. He calls him Andrew Parker, the Reform UK canvasser. He describes Islam as a cult, and then he suggests that you should get army recruits from Deal, which is a place near Dover in Kent. Get young recruits there with guns on the beach, target practice, effing just shoot them. This is what the Greeks done. You know all about that. The Greeks shot a load. Ring fence Bradfordstan, and apologies for this language, but it just goes on like this. It is clip after clip after clip of it.
Absolutely. And whilst in that statement Nigel is saying that this particular canvasser won't work for Reform UK, it's going to definitely open a can of worms about what Farage's plans are with the other candidates. And because as I said, this isn't the first of this type of allegation. Sure, this one's probably a little rawer and the language used is stronger, but this definitely isn't the first candidate or someone who is involved in Reform UK's canvassing who has been found out to be saying things that the majority of the public would find deeply offensive. So I think the statement that Nigel Farage has made about this particular canvasser is probably just going to see him being pushed further about what he's going to do about other candidates that so far have slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, we had Ben Habib, the co-deputy leader, on the show yesterday, and he blamed journalism, basically said that a lot of the candidates were being misquoted. It was bad journalism. This was after Facebook messages posts, which we had evidence of. And of course, you can't say that when you're presented with video clips like this. But let's talk about the revelations concerning Reform. First of all, Adam, it's a Channel 4 undercover investigation. The channel has revealed some of the tactics and the shocking language used by members of the Reform UK campaign. The filming was done in Clacton. That is, of course, where Nigel Farage is a candidate. Here's just some of the audio, beginning with a canvasser explaining how the UK should deal with asylum seekers.
Get the young recruits there, yeah, with guns on the beach, target practice, to shoot them.
Racist language was repeatedly used, here directed at the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
We got it. What's good is he?
And homophobia from Farage's inner circle.
Did you see that degenerate flag on the front bonnet? What the old Bill doing promoting that crap?
And here's another clip where a Reform canvasser gives his views on Islam.
All they're interested in doing is taking over, changing everyone to be a Muslim. You see, what the Islamics want, and it's horrendous, really, is sick, mate, sick. It's a cult. Look, I tell you what, if you don't know about Islam, it's the most disgusting cult out.
Just a quick reminder for the full list of candidates in Clacton, you can go to whocanivotefor.co.uk. You've just heard a bit of the language in that undercover investigation for Channel 4. How bad is this for Reform UK, Adam?
Well, we should say Nigel Farage has been very quick to dissociate himself from it, saying it's unacceptable that the people in the undercover video will have no further role in the campaign. But he also said to Channel 4, why aren't you reporting about the anti-white comments made by the Labour candidate who is black? So he's still kind of going into that whole racism area. Now, how damaging is it? At one level, it is not surprising that some of the people backing reform have these views. And, you know, congratulations and well done, Channel 4, for going undercover and finding them. It's not the same as saying everyone who's going to vote for Reform UK has his views, because I'm sure they don't. So I would have thought, on balance, this will put some people off from voting Reform. The immediate question, of course, is what impact it's going to have in Clacton, where Nigel Farage is the Reform candidate, taking a decision to stand there, previously held, of course, by a UKIP MP in the past. Now, I've just been looking on YouGov's site for MRP, and they're now saying that they expect Nigel Farage to win. They think he's got about 45% of the vote. That puts Labour that puts the Conservatives and then Labour a considerable distance behind. And effectively what it means is all the other candidates or all the other votes would have to unite around one person to stop Nigel Farage.
In a huge tactical voting.
Yeah, so it
effort.
doesn't look as if this will shave enough off Nigel Farage's personal following to stop his advance.
So damaging, but maybe not so damaging that it puts Nigel Farage out of the picture as the man that the polls say is the favourite to take the constituency of Clacton. As you mentioned, Nigel Farage says he's dismayed at the reprehensible comments from Reform UK campaigners in Clacton in Essex. Here is the Reform leader talking to a Channel 4 journalist.
Would you apologise to the Prime Minister for the appalling racist way that one of your campaigners spoke about Rishi Sunak?
That was horrible.
Do you apologise to the Prime Minister?
It was horrible.
That's not quite an apology, is it?
How much further can I go? Of course this is an apology. It was horrible. I don't know who this bloke is. Somebody I met once years ago. I mean, awful. Horrible. Almost as bad as the Labour candidate in Clacton and his slurs on white people. Have you covered that?
I'm here to focus
No.
on...
Have you covered the Labour? No.
We scrutinise all of the parties and their campaigns. But if you are as appalled by this as you say you are, why are you trying to deflect? Why are you trying to deflect if you are as appalled as you say you are?
Have you covered the racism of the Labour
Because I would like to ask you also about the members of your inner circle, because they've also made homophobic, racist, xenophobic comments. People who have senior roles in your campaign in Clacton.
I would drink white men's tears. I'm standing for black and Asian people, not pretty.
That is Nigel Farage speaking to Channel 4 there as a result of that undercover investigation. Let's bring Andy Bell in early, shall we? We're here to talk about his book, but I am keen to know what you think of this as a veteran of many an election campaign. Andy Bell, political editor at Channel 5. A warm welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
Will this touch the sides for Reform, or some people may hold the view that it actually does them good, that there are more people out there than we care to think who might agree with some of these comments?
I guess that is always possible. It's difficult to put a figure on that kind of thing. I guess we were just hearing about Adam talking about the chance of Nigel Farage winning in Clacton itself. I guess the big picture as well is obviously what about in other constituencies where Reform UK have been gaining ground and where it looks as if the main people they will be doing damage to are the Conservatives, and it's sort of people who may have voted Conservative in 2019, for instance, who might now be thinking about voting Reform UK. There was already some suggestion in some polling that Nigel Farage's comments about Ukraine and essentially blaming NATO for expanding eastwards, that those comments may have been doing some damage to Reform UK's standing. Be interesting to see if the reporting of this does some damage there as well. And if it does, obviously the people who will be most pleased about it will be the Conservatives. It could mean the difference between them hanging on to some seats, which otherwise, if Reform was surging, they might have lost.
18 seats is the predicted amount from one MRP's poll that we saw yesterday.
A source fairly sympathetic to Nigel Farage.
Yes. I think it was the same poll that also said that the Lib Dems would be the opposition party, right? If I haven't confused both my MRP polls there. I mean, Adam, we had Ben Habib, the deputy co-leader of Reform, on last night, and that was concerning a candidate who's made some pretty horrific comments, talked about, slaughtering asylum seekers effectively. And Ben Habib said, I don't know anything about this. I've spoken to Party HQ. These comments have been misreported.
I think he himself at one point suggested that some boat people might be left to drown.
Well, yes. His main steer was, and we basically went through several Reform candidates we are talking about now, but this is all on the same theme. We gave him several examples of Reform candidates who had said pretty awful things, either been linked to pretty awful people or said some damning things. And none of those people had been suspended. And we asked him what it would take for Reform to suspend a candidate, or are they quite happy to just leave this out there?
Well, there is a candidate who's done a video at length expounding the so-called Great Replacement theory, which comes out of the United States, which is the theory that black and brown people are trying to squeeze out the white people in countries like this. And he has not, as far as I know, been disciplined. And it was
I think we've had two candidates suspended for links to the BNP or a favourable outlook on the BNP.
But it was interesting that in that tape we just got from Channel 4, there was someone actually talking about the Great Replacement theory. So clearly this is current in some circles. I would say, I don't know whether Andy agrees, but I would say that one knock-on for this is it makes it much, much more difficult for Nigel Farage to ever try and get into the Conservative Party.
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, just sort of digesting this evening, there are clearly a number of people inside the Conservative Party who would like to see Nigel Farage join, who think that the way back from what at the moment looks like a difficult defeat, of course we don't know, we haven't got there yet, but if the opinion polls are right, the way back is to unite the right, and that the place where those voters have gone that they need to bring back are Reform and Nigel Farage. But as you say, if you get this kind of thing popping up, it does get pretty difficult for the Conservatives, I would imagine, to say, right, come on back in and join.